actually had a very good day yesterday in terms of Homeland Security. And someday we had to make the move, and we decided to make the move. It would be nice again if we could have our cabinet, because our cabinet, which is outstanding, is going through a lot. I noticed Chuck Schumer yesterday with fake tears. I'm going to ask him who is his acting coach, because I know him very well. I don't see him as a crier. If he is, he's a different man. There's about a 5% chance that it was real, but I think they were fake tears.
That from last hour at the White House there, the president meeting with members of the small business community and defending his travel ban as protests break out in airports and cities across the country. For more on this, I want to bring in Pete Hegseth, a veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, also a Fox News contributor, host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Pete, good morning to you. And Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, co-founder of the Muslim Reform Movement, and a former U.S. Navy lieutenant commander. And Doctor, thanks for coming back here to America's Newsroom. Gentlemen, we may be interrupted. We expect what we call tape play out from the White House on an executive order that's about to be signed in regulation. So if that happens, my apologies. Dr. Jasser, if you take this time out, this pause for 90 days or 120 days, what is the likely policy or recommendation that comes out of this temporary ban?
Well, Bill, I'm glad you're asking that, because really the 3 months or 4 months are going to run by pretty quick, and what's going to happen after? I'll tell you, as a Muslim, there is nothing more American than fighting theocracy. And I think the problem with the last 8 years has been, yes, they've been vetting, but they've been vetting about terrorism, violent extremism, a tactic. It's time to shift towards countering violent Islamism, jihadism. And the president had talked about convening a commission against radical Islamism. I hope he begins to convene that and we begin to vet ideology, just like in the Cold War. We vetted against communist war theory, communist ideology, etc. That was part of the immigration process. I hope we begin to engage reformist Muslims. There is nothing more pro-Muslim. I mean, we need to stop the identity politics of There is nothing more pro-Muslim than vetting against jihadists so that those coming in truly represent Muslims who believe in freedom and our way of life in the West.
Do you have a way of doing that, Doctor? What's your suggestion?
Yeah.
Is it a questionnaire? Is it an interview? What is it?
We have a hashtag at the Muslim Reform Movement called "We Know What's Going On." The president said he wants to figure out what's going on. We know what's going on. It's a 2-page declaration. Do they reject Caliphism? Do they reject the Islamic State concept, blasphemy laws? Do they get offended if there's a picture of the Prophet Muhammad? I mean, there's a way to do these interviews to figure out if the lens in which they look at society is a theopolitical fascist one or if it's one based in freedom and liberty. And it can be done. We've done it, and our founding fathers did it.
Yeah, Pete, it sounds like it's like almost a psychological test of sorts. What do you think of?
Well, yeah.
What do you think of comes of the recommendation after the ban is lifted?
Well, there could be a recommendation for 3 more months. There could be a recommendation for a long-term stay. It is a privilege to get a visa to come to the United States. It is about allegiance. That's what the doctor is referring to. Do they really want to come here and be a part of the fabric of our country? You could start checking social media accounts, which are going to reveal preferences very directly. You can get into phone records. Some of the things they've talked about is if you want to come to the United States, give us your phone and who you've been calling and who you've been talking to. Give us access to other forms of communication. These are things we can ask for. If you want to come here, you have to voluntarily give them to us so that we can review it to make sure that you're someone who would add to America, not detract from it. So there are practical steps we can take in the process. Interviews are part of it, interviews of others, that already happens. But we've got to dig deeper, find out more, because these countries, the reason they were identified, the leadership of these countries don't know who their people are, so they can't be vetted, let alone extreme vetting. So we've got to get our arms around the problem.
Some of the heat is coming from Democrats and some Republicans, too, about the process and how it's implemented. President Trump tweeted this: if the ban were announced with a 1-week notice, the bad, meaning the bad guys, would rush into our country during that week. A lot of bad dudes out there, end quote. Pete, you agree with that?
It's common sense. Exactly what happened when what has happened at our southern border in light of the stance that Donald Trump would take vis-a-vis what Barack Obama's open border approach was. People rush to the border to get across while they still can. If you list a time limit on this, you invite the same opportunity over the course of a couple of days or weeks. Yes, it happened quickly. Some of the processes were not fully in place, but it was a prudent measure, a common sense measure that needs to happen at a time of war when our enemies are trying to infiltrate us based on ideology. I applaud what the president has done. Hopes he sticks next to his guns. And I would laud conservatives and Republicans not to rush to pile on with the left-stream media on this.
Doctor, what do you think we need to be considering now after watching what we did over the past 3 days?
I think we need to come together as a nation and figure out the fact that we're all together and keeping our country secure. Let's have a strategy. And as we develop a strategy to say that, you know what, our founding fathers fought theocracy. It's very pro-Muslim and pro-modern Islam to vet against jihadists. I really actually don't understand why Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan weren't included. But on the one hand, the left can't say, well, it's a Muslim ban, while they only included 7 countries, and say, well, you should have included more. So they can't have it both ways. We need to evolve into an ideological strategy on how to keep the homeland safe. And that's only going to be done when we have a countering violent Islamism strategy rather than countering violent extremism.
Thanks to both of you. Zuhdi Jasser, thank you. Pete, thanks to you as well.
Bill.